In this episode of the Orange Nerd Show, we have a fantastic panel today. We got Mr. Jay Shear, we got Evan and the Italiano. We're talking all about Disney, Lucasfilm, Marvel. We're going to even dip into the Oscars. We have a lot to discuss today on this episode of the Orange Nerd Show. Welcome aboard, everybody, to this episode of the Orange Nerd Show, where we talk about everything except the theme parks. We talk about studio, streaming, corporate side, a lot of the corporate side lately. Everything except theme parks. Today, we're focusing really on the studio and the streaming side of things. Before we dive into our topic today, I want to introduce Mr. George the Italiano. Welcome back, George.
Thanks for having me back on. It's always a good time talking shop with you fellas, whether it's park, studio, corporate side, and everything else in between. It's always a good time.
Absolutely. If you could let everybody at home know where they could find you on social media.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There it is, Mr. Sticky Icky George. And right below George, we got Evan returning. Evan, it's been far too long, brother. It's good to have you back.
Thanks for inviting me back. I love this show. And I was wondering, I'm like, why did Orange Grove invite me back? Let me look at these topics. I'm like, okay, you got Marvel, Lucasfilm, Oscars. I love the Oscars. So I'm like, okay, I got things to say. This is going to be a fun one. So thanks for having me back. You guys can find me on Twitter at HarrisEV9, and then my YouTube channel with my friend Nathan at Nathan Rojas.
There you go. And I will be linking all of that in the description below. So make sure you follow, support these gentlemen. Absolutely. And last but certainly not least, we got the one, the only, Mr. Jay Shear. Jay, welcome back, sir.
I'm here. I'm glad to be here. I've missed podcasting with you guys as much. I've been so busy lately. I haven't been able to do it. I don't know when the last time we did a Story Geek show was. I want to do more, but it's fun to be here with you guys. Can't wait to talk about this stuff.
Absolutely. And where can they find you on social media?
Here's the thing: don't find me on social media. You if you want to, go look for me. But otherwise, man, I don't care. I'm hardly on there anyways. I'm mostly just DMing with these guys. To be honest.
That's true. That's true.
It's like the rate that social media is going. Jay's like, yeah, don't look for me. Don't find me.
Don't do it, man. Yeah, forget it. I'll let you know when my movie comes out, but that's not out yet, so I'll let you know.
Nice.
Perfect. All right, let's dive into our topics at hand today. So Sean Bailey got the axe. He got the boot. The accountability train that Iger was talking about when he started the company, when he came back to the company about a year and a half ago now. It made a stop at Sean Bailey's office, I guess, and he got the boot. Okay, so he's out, and this guy from Searchlight now, I think his name is David Greenbaum. He's taken over. Okay, this is interesting because Sean Bailey's been with Walt Disney Studios for like 15 years or so. Evan, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this? What do you think this means for the studio?
This is very interesting. So yeah, I did some research on this, and he's been there for a long time. I think he's even quoted as saying he's had some hits and misses. He produced one of my worst or least favorite movies of all time in The Lone Ranger. Can't stand that movie. It's bad. It's terrible. I wanted to leave. Anyways, so he had a lot of hits and misses, but you're right. This is part of Iger's, accountability train, even though, he can't fire himself, even though he had a lot to do with the whole thing anyways. Sure. That's besides this point. But yeah, so this is very similar to what happened with Victoria Alonso as well, in terms of like, we got to blame somebody for the VFX and the post-production issues that were happening last year and still continue to happen. But I think this is an interesting firing. This was the end of his contract, so it could have been amicable, firing. Could be moving on to other places. I was reading an article that said he could be moving on to like Netflix or something of the sorts, another big streamer. But for Disney, I don't think this means too much. I don't think this is going to mean the end of the Disney live action remakes. They're still going to make them. We are nearing the end of like, how much can they possibly do? Right. There's not much they can do at this point besides doing the recent ones. You see, we are getting a Moana live action remake. Moana came out only like 8 years ago. I think it was 2016. So it's not too far off. So I think they're going to be continuing to do live action remakes. Casting could be different though. We are living in a time where people are more upset about the casting. He is in charge of hiring people like Rachel Zegler in Snow White, which got, like it or not, people are like, oh, it can't be Rachel because she's not like white or whatever. It's like, okay, whatever. And then the Halle Berry controversy. My Little Mermaid can't be black. Oh, so all those kinds of stuff were under his umbrella. A lot of the cast members did like him for supporting a lot of women as the main leads, diversity in his casting. That could be done away with. Disney's a very reactive company at times. So, like most movie productions are. So I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of lessen down on that, unfortunately, but hopefully not. You never really know when it comes with Disney. But overall, for me, I just think it's going to be more of the same with a different person in charge. Now, real quick, the Searchlight person coming in charge, very interesting, because I'm a huge fan of Fox Searchlight. They have a lot of awards pedigree, and Disney is usually one with a lot less care or interest in awards pedigree. Fox Searchlight just had 4 wins the other day with Poor Things. So putting some more awards pedigree, some more of that influence into their Disney live action stuff could mean a higher quality, hopefully, in these live action remakes. Hopefully, I mean, I'm a fan of like some of the ones they've done. I'm a fan of the Aladdin one. A lot of people hated that one. I had fun with Aladdin. Yeah. It was different. It was unique. It was fun. Lion King was horrible though. Mulan was horrible though. So I think it is time for a new direction.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I think I agree with you, Evan, on that. I think the Searchlight guy, I think he'll bring a lot more quality. I think we're going to get more films that really like more Oscar-worthy stuff, and I think that's good for Disney. They absolutely need that. Now, Jay, I want to go to you now. So Sean Bailey's out, and he came out and said, hey, look, we're going to look at the slates and stuff like that, and we're going to see what films are necessary, or does this need to be made, right, is what he said. And that could mean 1,000 different things. That's kind of a vague comment, but what are your thoughts on that and the overall choice to put David Greenbaum in there and Sean Bailey out?
So I don't know either of these guys. You know what, like anytime there's a producer out there, I'm not going to badmouth them because I'd like to work with them. But yeah. However, I will say this. If I look at the slate of movies from each guy, anybody has a hit and miss ratio. That's just the way that's just the nature of the business. Movie making is difficult. You can't. Sometimes things look great, they don't turn out great. Whatever. I will tell you this: Sean Bailey, looking through his films, there's only one film that stood out to me is like I loved that film. I'm not a live action remake guy. I'm a new, like, let's explore new territory kind of person. And so the only movie that I really liked that he did was Saving Mr. Banks. I thought Saving Mr. Banks was phenomenal. But a lot of that's nostalgia for Walt Disney, if I'm being honest, right? Like, sure. I really like that aspect of it. When I look at David's track record, I mean, he's got No Country for Old Men, which is a fantastic movie. He's got There Will Be Blood, which is saying a lot. He's got The Tree of Life, which is controversial, but at least he's going after it. Shape of Water. Super Troopers 2, which is pretty funny. One of I think the best movies of the last decade, Jojo Rabbit, is on his list. So, like, man, I'm willing to give this guy the benefit of the doubt and see what he does. He's obviously doing films that are not things we see every day, right? And so from a filmmaker's perspective, from a writer's perspective, I would take that every day than regurgitating another story that's virtually the same script as the one we already saw. Does that mean that those, to Evan's point, look, Disney makes bank off those movies, right? Like, you can complain about Black Little Mermaid all day long, but they made money off that movie. Yeah. So to me, I think like they're gonna still do some of that stuff, but I hope what David does coming in is he actually starts to say, like, look, if we need more IP in the parks, if we need some of our original IP that we want to make money off of by putting that in the parks, let's not just rehash the same old stuff. We'll do some of that, but let's do some new stuff as well. Stuff like Jojo Rabbit, give people like a creative vision. I mean, I didn't like Poor Things, but talk about creativity, man. Like, that is creativity like crazy. So yeah, more power to him. Let's see it. I want to see what he comes up with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm curious what he brings to the table because right now Disney Studios, their live action stuff is very much like the kind of the summer kind of popcorny flicks, right? Like you're going in there like Little Mermaid and these live action films. I want to see some of these Oscar worthy. I want to see Disney dip into some more Oscar worthy stuff, from that Disney Studio brand. I think that would be really good. Now, I'm not saying you got to completely abandon the popcorn thing. I think that's part of Disney's DNA too.
Right.
But mix in some of the stuff that will get some Oscars. I think that'd be fantastic. More higher quality than what we've seen. But George, what do you think? This change.
Before you go to George,
Yeah.
You've got a little bit of a loose wire on your mic.
Oh,
yeah, it's kind of going like
in
in and out.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you go ahead and I'll fix my my
It's
mic.
good now. So just make sure it's in there good. Yeah, go for it.
Gotcha.
So, to everything that Evan and Jay was mentioning, I feel like that, again, what Iger was saying about accountability, obviously he's making the moves to show off that statement that, it's not just words. He's actually, doing something about it. Obviously, he's seen something internally that's just not working right within the studio, so he's going to change it up a bit. I do agree with Jay. I would love to see some more original stuff coming from the studio, especially with a different outlook. Like, of all the films that Jay had mentioned, I have seen several of those, and quite frankly, they're very good. I actually rate them as masterpieces, if you will. Like, so to actually get that kind of point of view to bring someone in, hopefully that they can revitalize the live action, because Disney was big on the live actions, and what I mean by that, not by live action remakes, but the live action classics, such as 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the original 1961 Parent Trap. OG, I know you're a Pollyanna guy, So.
Dude. Yeah, man. Absolutely. I that's like for Disney Plus, whenever I log into Disney Plus, that's what OG's watching. I'm watching Pollyanna, Parent Trap, all the old school Disney movies. I love that stuff. I eat it up.
So I would love to see more of that original content coming back to Disney. Whether it's original content or whether it's based off of novels that they may have not have dived into. I think that would be kind of cool. But just to constantly keep on doing these live action remakes over and over again, which again, the reason why, they bring in a lot of money, and and there are a few of them that I do I do enjoy. Evan mentioned the live action Aladdin, live action Jasmine. But and then of course I think my all-time live action remake that I think was done that kind of, for me, spearheaded the whole thing of why they did was The Jungle Book. I absolutely love the live action Jungle Book. But again, sometimes too much is not a good thing. When you keep on for instance, like you have the same dinner over and over again night after night, it's like you get sick and tired of it. But there are some of the movies that are on the slate that have either been canceled or put on hold, and I think a few of them that I think that they're just put on hold right now is I guess you could call it the live action Bambi, that they had a director tied to it that she had left the project.
Yeah, she's Sarah Polley. She was the one who did Woman Talking last year, and she left recently. I'm like, good for you, because I hate that. Like, let me win an Oscar and then go to Disney pipeline. It doesn't really work out for most people there. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So it was her decision to walk away. I
think it was creative differences. I didn't delve too deep into the article.
Yeah, I believe I believe you're right. I think it was creative differences, but I think because of the creative differences, it was her decision that she bowed out. And then the other one is the live action remake of Sword in the Stone, which I thought was quite interesting because for me, with that type of, I wouldn't do like word for word of a retelling of the Sword in the Stone animated, but I would love to see an adaptation of King Arthur. I think that would be like really cool, but kind of do it in a style not like that sugarcoat, Disney-esque qualified. I want to see it like a nitty-gritty, like raw, kind of like Game of Thrones, kind of Vikings kind of story.
Even if you did it like Pirates of the Caribbean, where it's like family oriented, but a little bit like that would kill, dude.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need that back. And a couple of things here that you're talking about. I think upcoming as well, they have the Hercules from the Russo brothers producing. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah,
Like,
what?
it's not looking too great there. But I think the bad thing for Disney here is that they have a lot of consistency with their live action remakes, and they're consistently not performing well critically. Like Lion King comes out not great, and that was like 2019, and then Mulan comes out during COVID. Less said about that, the better. Like they kind of just scooted that away. It bombed critically and financially for them. And then you have like Little Mermaid, which did 578 million around that ballpark, but it didn't reach like I assume they wanted to that like a billion dollar hit. So they have to rely on what's coming up next in terms of like they have Little Mermaid, Tron Ares is coming out. I think I was reading an article. Tron Ares might be Bailey's last like producing one that he was on contract for. And I think Tron Ares is looking not that great in terms of like the plot of we're going to not be in the grid, we're going to be in the real world. I'm like, then why is it called Tron if you're in the real world? Stupid. But I think Disney needs to do something because they're losing their clout in the industry in terms of being like the number one big studio. Last year, Universal became the first studio in years to be the first studio to be first place in the box office and first place in the awards. Oppenheimer came home with the big money on Sunday. So Disney can't really tout that. They bought Fox, they bought Searchlight, and that was doing well for them with Shape of Water when that won. Jojo Rabbit, like Jay said, won Best Adapted Screenplay. So, like, they're still an awards pedigree company, technically, under Fox Searchlight. But I think they're losing to bigger companies like Universal and maybe even WB. I know WB is getting killed recently because of Zaslav, but you can't argue their slate, especially in 2024, looking pretty dang good. The Joker, Dune Part 2 is a huge hit. They have a lot of other Furiosa. They have a diversity in their slate that Disney can't account for because they're doing a lot of these remakes. They're doing a lot of these stuff. And while we want them to do original stuff, it hasn't happened in years. And I don't think Greenbaum is going to be one to be like, let's go back to do original stuff, guys. And Bob Iger's like, God, why didn't I think of that? Because they don't want that. They want to make money. Which is why I think they want to continue doing the live action remakes. Do I hope like something internally, maybe a better script, maybe they can look at that to change things around. But going off of what George was saying, I think they have a lot of good material that they can easily adapt. Sword in the Stone sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
They could really change that up there. And I know a lot of studios are afraid of the fantasy kind of film. Dungeons and Dragons didn't do so well, and studios are like, what have you done for me lately kind of thing. But I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in like the 80s and 90s they can dive into. I'm still waiting on my like in the early 2000s Treasure Planet live action. Really cool. I love Treasure Planet.
Evan, you're speaking my language. That's the kind of movie they should be. That's the kind of movie I want to see them do live action because then because that movie didn't do well in the box office, right? So you remake that one and you give it a second chance at life.
Yes, that's the thing. Like, do the ones that weren't so good, like Treasure Planet, some other early 2000s Disney fare that didn't do so well at the box office. Have a director come on board and be like, I can make that better. But for me, I think Disney right now is picking the content. I hate saying content, but like, picking the movie, picking the project first, and then going out there and finding a director. For example, the whole Bambi thing. They wanted to do Bambi for years. They saw that Sarah Polley was a very famous female director. And she recently won an award, and they were like, I want her. It happens all the time. And that's not usually how you want to grab your talent because it doesn't really stick that well.
And the other issue that Disney has to tackle, too, is with the budgets of these films. Yeah. Because, I mean, a lot of them are so astronomical, but when you look at the finished product, I think that was my biggest issue with the live-action Little Mermaid was the CGI. The graphics, for me, it just wasn't up to par for what the budget was. It had really nothing to do too much with the acting. Sorry, minus Aquafina. Just sorry. Haley Bailey. All right, is it Haley Bailey?
I think so.
Okay.
Let's go with that.
Okay, we'll go with that. Phenomenal voice. Like, she could sing till the cows come.
I actually, from like on a personal level, I like her. Like, she's a likable.
Yeah, she is.
Person.
She really is.
Her.
But for me, like, the budget for that film to what the finished product was, it doesn't match. And then Jay had mentioned like the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. You go back, those movies go back 15, 20 plus years. And the graphics on those look so much better. CGI. The CGI and the technology used for that, you would think would be so much up to par.
Right.
That actually, believe it or not, I said the word graphics, but actually, the live action Little Mermaid does look like basic graphics. It looks like something right out of like a college computer. Yeah. And it's like, why isn't the technology for film progressing along with the budgets? Because to me, they're just not adding up.
You know, Evan, you brought up a great point about Universal, which you're absolutely right on that. That was a huge milestone the other day. You know what they achieved. I'm very curious because Bob Iger now on like 2 or 3 different occasions has given Universal like props, right? Like at the earnings calls and stuff, and at that Morgan Stanley thing, he was like, "Oh yeah, congratulations, Universal." It's out of character. It's kind of weird. Like, what's
nice? What?
Like, yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, why is he giving Universal all these props? I have a theory. I think he's trying to maybe lure some of them over to Disney, maybe behind the scenes. But what are your thoughts on that? I'll start with you, Jay, and then we'll go around the panel. But what do you think about that? Like, is he making a power move right here, or is this just him kind of acknowledging, hey, you know what, we have some downfalls. Competition's doing great, and he's just trying to have a moment of candor, more or less.
I think. You know what? Look, it's probably all of the above, to be honest with you, right? Like he's got to do a couple. Iger's in a unique situation. He's got to make super fans happy again, which he's struggling to do because some of the fans are just not happy. He's got to solve his PR issues, which are horrific, and they're still doing PR blunders today. He's got to correct all of the leadership issues that he has that are not producing the results that he wants, and then he's in a position where his biggest competitor is basically killing it, right? Like, so he's got this unique scenario on his hands where is he trying to attract some of the best talent that they probably have? Yes. Is he trying to make it look like if I compliment them, it still looks like I'm Big Papa Iger being able to compliment everybody, as opposed to, if I'm mad, if I come out as like, oh no, then I've acknowledged what they've done, right? But if I compliment them, it's like I'm still in the leadership seat here, and I'm just going to compliment you guys. You guys are doing a great job. As soon as he goes after them, then he looks like he's now second fiddle, right? Yeah. So he's playing 3D chess here. He's doing lots of different things, and I think ultimately he's making decisions that will get him some pretty good results in 3 to 5 years. Yes. I think the bigger problem, he's just got to ride out the next 2 to 3 years because that's going to be rough territory, man. You know?
Absolutely. What do you think, Evan?
Going right off that, like I have that same sentiment for a lot of different things what's happening at Disney. Mm-hmm. You have to ride off the next 2 to 3 years. That's the same thing for Marvel and Disney, Star Wars. Because I think the next 2 to 3 years, while the slate looks interesting from a fan perspective, I don't know if it's going to be received well as well. But yeah, I think what he's doing is smart and it's necessary. Post-COVID, Disney has not been doing well across the board, even on their animation side. 2 years in a row now, they haven't won Best Animated Feature, losing out to like Pinocchio last year, then losing out to Boy and the Heron this year. Like, they need to up not just their live action stuff, but their animated stuff as well, which used to be the reason why Disney is their animated projects. And that's not doing so well. And I think getting some creatives from Universal can definitely help. Super Mario Bros., while I didn't love it, was a huge success. And that's from Universal. They're across the board doing a lot of different things that can really just that different mindset from different studios, different people at different studios could be very useful across the board. So I think Iger's playing the smart game here.
Yeah.
I think I told you guys about this, but I'll just reference it again because I think it's really interesting to say. I have a client of mine who's building an app, and the app is for young families. And so we're interviewing people in the process of saying, like, you know, would you be interested in this kind of app? And one of the things that I've heard from several parents, now these are more conservative leaning people, but like, you know, George, you're a parent, but Evan, you're not a parent, are you?
Not at all.
Yeah, I'm not either, right? And neither is OG.
No.
And so we don't see things through the lens of like, would I let my kids watch this? Do I need to talk to my kids through this? Whatever. But and I'm acknowledging some of the people we've interviewed lean towards the conservative side more. But one of the dads said to us, he goes, "It used to be that I could just let my kids turn on Disney stuff, and I wasn't worried about it at all. But now I've got to vet it because I'm not sure if it's going to drive a conversation that I'm not ready to have with them." Now, I get that. Some of the people listening will be like, "Oh, what a bigot. He doesn't want to talk about whatever." But here's the thing. It doesn't matter from a revenue perspective because the guy's not turning on Disney Plus. So if you're sitting in Bob Iger's seat, regardless of what you think the politics of the situation should be, he's got to figure out a way where people can go, yeah, I'm going to turn on Disney Plus and let my kids just go to town and watch that. Because guess what? That's watch time. That's eyeballs on your platform. Every time that kid sits in front of Disney Plus for 3 hours, versus, no, I don't want my kid to sit in front of Disney Plus for 3 hours. You can watch a half hour of DuckTales and you're done, buddy. Like it's like, so that's a thing to think about, right? Like it's a thing to consider as you move forward. And like I said, like Evan is saying, it's gonna take a while to get through this glut of like, this is what we've got in the hopper, but this is what we want in the hopper, and then that stuff's got to come out, and it's just gonna take a while.
Yeah, there's a lag in this stuff. This content takes, animated movies take 3 to 4 years to produce, So the stuff that you're seeing today is a product of like 2021, 2020, and so it goes also the other direction, right? Like the stuff the stuff that Iger is setting up right now, we're not going to see the fruits of that labor for another 3 or 4 years. So you guys are absolutely correct. George, before we move on to Marvel and Lucasfilm, what are your thoughts on Iger complimenting Universal? Is there a power play here? A little 4D chess?
Yes, I personally feel like this is kind of like a peace treaty, so to speak, kind of like putting it in his back pocket, kind of holding it for when he needs it, because you never know, if anything kind of goes down, you kind of want to have, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer, so to speak. I'm not saying that they're enemies, but like it's your competition, so you never know if, you happen to need somebody, from the company, or if someone ends up leaving that company, to possibly, come over to Disney and what have you. Iger is a very people person driven type of guy, like he knows how to work a crowd, like he knows how to talk. Networker. He definitely knows how to get in there. And I think honestly, and I know we're not talking about parks, but I think that's why he ended up picking Josh D'Amaro. Josh D'Amaro is a face, he knows how to get out there and work a crowd and talk people. I just wish that he knew what the hell he was doing most of the time, but he does know how to work a crowd, and I feel like that was one of Iger's strong suits, when it comes to wheeling and dealing, and to Jay's statement of, I guess because I can now speak to the perspective that, yes, I am a parent. And I think what a lot of people, and this is just coming from me, each person, you can raise your kids how you ever want to do it. But I feel like that the conversation needs to come before the content is being watched by the children. Whether or not that they choose something or not, it's like just have a generalized conversation with your kids to say, certain things as you get older that you may watch may have content that, may be uncomfortable for you. You may have questions. No, you could come to me. You could talk about it. I think when you have like that open relationship with parent and child, that it then at the end of the day, when they do see something or watch something, they may have questions, but it wouldn't be as awkward of a conversation to have when that time comes, because eventually it's going to come one way or the other.
I'll give you that guy's phone number. You can talk to him.
Exactly. Now let's pivot a little bit. We got Marvel and Lucasfilm. Now both of these studios now, which is kind of interesting. Both of them are kind of in a drought, right? Kind of, not exactly doing what they could be doing. I guess we'll kind of start with Marvel, then we'll kind of pivot to Lucasfilm. George, with Marvel, can they turn this thing around? Because they've had. Look, there's no elephant in the room. The hype is not there like it was.
Yeah.
Prior to Endgame, definitely not.
Yeah, so Endgame was like the final crown jewel that was placed on the crown for Marvel, and I think it just kind of, they relied on the notion that, okay, after Endgame, we can still keep this going. We can keep this winning streak, afloat. But I think it was just because you had such a high kind of ending that should have been an ending for these characters, but then you're going to drag it along afterwards. It kind of lost its appeal. But I feel like now, from what I'm seeing, we won't know until we actually physically see the movies that the direction that Marvel is going. Yeah. Starting off with Deadpool and Wolverine, I think that it's looking like a great startup of a newer generation of Marvel, because then you're introducing Wolverine back, but then not just Wolverine, and then you're going to move into the rest of the X-Men, and then you're going to move into Fantastic Four. So you have a whole new slate of characters and a whole new slate of a storyline to go off of, where you're not just kind of repeating yourself over and over again. And it's a different take of what we're used to seeing X-Men on the big screen and Fantastic Four. So I do think that as long as they can execute it well, and I feel like to not overly complicate the storyline, but you have to watch one thing to understand this and back and forth. I think they should kind of get out of that, and also the amount of content that they're giving us in a short amount of time.
Yeah, the amount is a problem when it's a cinematic connected universe, because let's say you have a movie that's releasing tomorrow and you didn't watch the 2 shows leading up to the movie. Well, now you have a person that's saying, hey, I'm not going to go see the movie because I need to watch the shows first, right? They're opting out to catch up. That is a big problem for them. Yeah, I agree with you though, George. I think Deadpool and Wolverine's gonna absolutely crush. The energy behind that thing is crazy. That's gonna be a huge hit. X-Men, I think, will do very well. They're kind of getting back to these these characters that are like household names, so to speak. I think for a little while there, they were kind of getting into like these ancillary characters a little bit too much. And I think that people were kind of checking out. And those characters have a place for sure. But I think you have to sprinkle it in with some of these bigger names. And they really didn't do that. So I think that with Deadpool, Wolverine, the X-Men coming in, Fantastic Four, I think Marvel is going in the right direction. Now, it's all about execution, though. You know what I'm saying? You can have the greatest characters in the world. If the movies aren't good, then it's not going to, look, we saw what happened with the last Fantastic Four movie, right? It was bad,
It was great, right? Yeah, come on. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, so they still have to deliver, right. You know what I'm saying? But
Evan, it was great right at the edge of a sledgehammer.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That movie had like the crazy experience for me, because I remember watching it being like, oh, it's not that bad. But then there hits a point in the movie where they do like a time skip, and everything after that is just horrendously bad. But yeah, I think I have to go back to what Jay said a couple minutes ago in terms of like, you got to rough out these next 2 to 3 years. Because I don't think Deadpool and Wolverine is going to be the savior that people think it's going to be. Marvel has had some hits post-Endgame. Shang-Chi is one of my personal favorites. I love that movie. It's ridiculous that we possibly have to wait till 2026 to see that movie. That's insane to me. It came out like 4 years ago now. It sounds like it. So I think they have to rough it out. X-Men, we talked about, George. Cannot wait to see that. Fantastic Four is going to be great next year. But in terms of X-Men, I think Feige's thinking the same thing as you, George. I cannot wait to see X-Men. Feige's a huge X-Men fan. He was a producer on the 2000 X-Men. He's been there since 1999. But we're not going to see X-Men until post-Secret Wars. When Secret Wars coming out? Maybe 2027, most likely 2028. It's 2024 right now. we have a lot of garbage to get through. And I'm sorry to say, I mean, I'm a Marvel fan. I don't want to say garbage, but it's like Thunderbolts is coming out next year. Who knows what Thunderbolts is? Crickets. Nobody does. It's gonna bomb. I'm sorry. It's not gonna do well. It's coming out 2 weeks after Superman.
Man,
it's not going to do well. No. I'm sorry.
See that's the major issue. It's like, again, just what you were saying, Evan. It was like you have to wait for Secret Wars in order to then get X-Men, which you automatically know X-Men is going to be a slam banger of an IP for Marvel. So it's like it's now in limbo because you got to get through A and B to get to C, and it's like that's what's the frustrating thing, that Marvel kind of caught themselves in a spider web, no pun intended, but it's like it's the hand that they're given because it's the ratio of how that they release these films.
And
Yeah.
they did it to themselves, right? Like in the COVID era, they're like, how do we solve this? We can't put movies out in theaters. Let's put all this focus in Disney Plus. And that made sense because the streaming wars were just beginning. But as Bob Iger, as Feige have even talked about, they alluded to, they messed up. They put too much content, like you guys have been saying. Falcon and Winter Soldier, all these other shows that have been created as cinematic products, split into 6 episodes that are varying degrees of interestingness, whatever. They're boring for the most part. Secret Invasion was a wild experience watching that week to week. I did it because I'm a fan. I gotta watch these things. I shouldn't have done it. It's bad. It's not good. But Echo came out. Is anybody talking about Echo? Nobody is. It's like it's crazy. They're just dropping. They're shadow dropping these stuff now. But this year, how many MCU shows do they have? Not that much. I think they're finally learning. They're gonna have Agatha coming out at the end of the year, which I already think is okay. Whatever. Like they liked her in whatever that show was, Scarlet Witch show. So they're gonna see her again, and this. I'm like, I don't know if that's.
We'll probably have to go through 5 more title changes before we actually get the release date.
Honestly, yeah, it was supposed to be like Coven of something and something, and it changes all the time. But yeah, I think Marvel is struggling with what they did to themselves. They put so much onus on the streaming wars or on the streaming, so they can intersect with the movies, and it's just not working out well. But to defend Kevin Feige a little bit, I think some of it was a necessity post Endgame. We can't be seeing more Iron Man, Cap, Thor stuff post Endgame. You got to spread out. Marvel is Marvel because of the abundance of interesting characters. Eternals was amazing. I not the movie. I like the concept of Eternals. I love the comics. And the movie just didn't hit. What else? Like Black Widow, it just didn't hit for me. Ant-Man was a flop last year. Didn't really like that one. Actually, liked Captain Marvel, was kind of fun for me. But Guardians of the Galaxy came out last year, and it was great. Great critical reception, great hit at the box office, but then you still had Captain Marvel flopping. So I think Deadpool can be a huge hit. I don't think that's going to affect how next year's Blade is going to do, how Thunderbolts is going to do. I just think, and Sony isn't helping, by the way. Because Sony, that's a funny thing. You ask a regular person, even after Dakota Johnson 3 years ago, you're joining the Marvel Universe. She thought she was joining the MCU, but she's joining the Sony in association with Marvel Universe. And
Inspired by.
Madam Web flopped. We have Kraven coming out this year. Spoiler alert, it's not going to do well. Venom coming out, that's going to be a big hit because it's Venom, but that's the last Venom movie. So it's like, I don't know if things are looking too bright for Marvel in the short term. For Iger, I'm sorry, man. You got to wait a long time to get a consistent box office consistency there like they used to have in like 2019, 2018.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Now, is Harrison Ford still connected to Thunderbolts as the Red Hulk?
He's President Ross, or he's going to be the new president in the MCU.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that maybe he might help it a little bit, but I mean, Indy
is
5
he really though? Like, remember we had Keaton in the Flash. People were like, Keaton's going to help out the box office. And
yeah, not at all. Yeah. Exactly. That's why I'm now I don't even know. You know, it's like, oh man, Jay, what do you think? Marvel, can they turn this thing around?
Well, I think the instructive way to look at what happened to Marvel, because this is cinematic history unfolding, right? Yeah. Like we've never seen anything like the MCU before. Not really, right? Not a connected universe. James Bond is probably the closest thing, but James Bond is maybe 2-3 movies are connected, but that are just kind of out there, you know. Here's where I think the MCU will go. I think we can look at comics as a better interpretation of what happened to the MCU and what will happen to the MCU moving forward. And generally speaking, and I say this as a person who wishes they could be more of a comics fan, but one, can't keep up because I can't afford it all. And two, there's these special storylines, and then there's, hey, we got new comics readers in from these awesome storylines. Yes. Let's create a bunch of other like spider web of stories around this because we've got people, and so they see dollar signs and they go hire anybody who can write comics and hire anybody who can draw comics because we're doing more storylines, and pretty soon you get to the stage where you're like, someone like me goes, man, I was with you for the Civil War storyline, and then you branched off and did a billion other things afterwards, and it only took me three issues of another comic to go, this is shit. I'm not reading the rest of this. I can't afford to read the rest of this.
All right.
The same thing has happened with the MCU. And I think a lot of that is about when you're trying to follow the money train because you've got something that's popular, that doesn't mean you have great ideas. And so then you're going, okay, bring back, I just talked about how much I love Jojo Rabbit. Bring back Taika Waititi to do another Thor film. Except he doesn't have any good ideas anymore.
It didn't work out.
Oh God, no more Thor, no more
exactly.
Thor,
So,
please,
like,
for the love of God, no more Thor.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the point.
I'm sorry. After seeing the bare ass cheeks of Chris Hemsworth, I'm done. Like I'm checked out.
Well, see, this is my thing, right? Like this is a perfect example of we see dollar signs. So bring back the same guy, have the same guy make another film. The thing is, he doesn't have a good idea. There's no good ideas for Thor right now. Chris Hemsworth is one of the originals. So when people say like, "Oh, if we just get Chris Evans to put on the suit again, if we just put Robert Downey Jr. put on the suit again," here's the problem, guys. If you don't have a good idea, it doesn't matter who's in the suit. He's got booty cheeks.
Booty cheeks.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's the thing is I feel like so Marvel will get it back, but I agree with Evan 100%. It's you can do a couple of films that are received well because they're essentially Elseworlds films that are not really tied to anything in particular, or Deadpool's going to make fun of all the stupid shit they've done. That's what they're going to do. But that'll make money, but it doesn't mean that the MCU is back. You got to have a storyline that everybody goes, it's unmissable, dude. And you don't need to have seen 3 TV shows to understand what's going on. And they'll get back, but it's going to take some time.
And to you guys' point, we've seen it with DC. Wonder Woman did amazing, but that didn't guarantee the success of all the other DC stuff.
Correct.
Yep.
So you got to,
And to intersect real quick as well, we got to look at the ones that were successful. And I hope, as a producer, Iger's looking at this as well. Guardians was successful because of James Gunn.
Yep.
Like, he came back with a vision, like Jay said. Taika, and I'm a huge fan of Taika. I know the internet went downhill on Taika because he made a bad Thor movie. But it's like, Taika's a very smart person. I just think he was creatively out of juice for Thor 4. No matter how much fun they had on set, I don't think it translated to a good movie. I just think a lot of people, you got to pick somebody with a great interest in the character. And even then, that might not all work out as well because you have too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yep.
And cause even I think for Captain Marvel 2, I liked it. Like there's and I think the director even had a fun with the character. It just doesn't translate on screen sometimes because the script's not there, and because Marvel's juggling too much things, they can't have the correct oversight or they can't have the right collaboration that is necessary because there's so many projects. We're not collaborating as much as they used to because some people are working on TV shows, some people are doing movies. That lack of collaboration is really harming them. So they got to find it again. Even Deadpool 3, I'm excited for it. I'm not the biggest fan of the director, Sean Levy. He made some of the Night of the Museum movies. They're good. He made Free Guy, which was, it was fine. But like Deadpool 3, people are going to see it not because of the director. They're coming for Ryan to make it fun, like Jay said, at them. But I'm hopeful for 2025. Yeah. Fantastic Four, if that bombs, man, or that's just not, I think it's going to be successful, but if it is not received well, that's not going to be good because that's the 4 people we're supposed to see for the next decade at least.
Exactly.
Thunderbolts, I already talked about that. Not going to happen. Not going to be good. Blade's been through how many drafts?
Dude.
But didn't he come out of Comic-Con in like 2017, 2018? It's crazy. What else is coming out next year? It's like, Thunderbolts, Blade, Fantastic Four. I think there's a 4th one. I don't know. But like,
see, and that was an issue with me even with DC. I feel like when, like, I do love DC, but I like more of the animated context of DC. Like when it comes to the live actions, like we have like so many Batmans, it's just like so ridiculous, and it's like, okay, well, this version didn't work. It's like I want to do this kind of version. It's like, oh yeah, let's throw Ben Affleck into the mix, and he'd be a good Batman. It's just like it just became so monotonous that it's just like I'm kind of like done with DC films. It's just like it burnt me out to say, okay, we're doing another one. Like before we even got to finish this rendition of this version, it's just like, because so many people had their own interpretation of Batman, of Superman, of Wonder Woman. It's just like it's just too much for me.
Yeah, which is why I think James Gunn playing it smart. He's only releasing Superman next year as the one film you got to keep track of, and I think that's going to be a hit. But again, for Marvel, it's that they're putting too much out, and if it's consistently bad, it's not going to look good for them. At least this year, they only got one film to worry about, but next year they're going to have 4 again. 4. And
in defense of Taika Waititi and some of the other creators, because I agree with Evan. I'd hate that Thor film, but I really like Taika.
Yeah.
They don't give him time because again, they're seeing dollar signs, and it's like, get the movie out the door. So it's like you can't give creative people 3 months to come up with a good idea and think you're going to get a great idea.
Okay. Sorry, really quick. I just want to say on Taika Waititi, I am a fan of him. He is very talented. Like with Jojo Rabbit, I absolutely love that film. Everything he touched with the Thor films, I'm sorry, I am not a fan of. I am not. Like, I just don't like
Ragnarok. You don't like Ragnarok?
No, I don't. I don't. It just felt like it was a little bit like too like Rainbow Skittles kind of comedy for me. Like it was like okay, and as I said, and Love and Thunder. I mean, literally, I like walked out of that theater with like blood streaming from my eyes. But it's, but I will say this: I could tolerate Ragnarok. I will say that, but it's like I think it also depends on too. As I think what you were just saying, Jay, it's like the amount of time. Yeah. Given for something. It's like, okay, when you have a deadline, it's like, okay, yeah, here's the script, go along with it, but you have this date to have it finished, and it's like, oh okay, it's like that time crunch, and it's sometimes you have to let a filmmaker kind of play a little bit, paint, kind of create a vision, and I think that maybe if they would have given him time with the Thor movies, they may have been, better. Maybe it's just me. I like Thor is like the least interesting for me out of all the Avengers. Yeah, like the first 2 was okay. But I just didn't really like the route that they were taking the character. He was okay with all of them together. Right. But like as a standalone film, it just didn't connect with me.
I like the character a lot. For me personally, and actually I like Taika Waititi. I think actually Taika Waititi, I actually like what he did with Mandalorian too, actually. I thought his episodes were actually pretty good. But here's the thing, it's like, for me personally, and this is just an OG thing, I'm not into like the slapsticky humor, right? So that's why I couldn't really get into Ragnarok or the Love and Thunder stuff. That's just a me thing,
To your point, OG, what Taika Waititi is excellent at is making fun of shit. Like that's his perfect. So if you don't want to be made fun of, if you don't want your hero to be made fun of, if you don't want your hero to be made to look like kind of an idiot, right? Yeah. Like he's not necessarily the guy to bring on board. I think he can get there if he has time. He can get there and make it. Ragnarok and Star Wars, I think he had a little bit more time. There was a clearer vision for what that was going to be. He added his jokes in, but they weren't like just purely making the movie seem ridiculous.
Like a parody almost.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly.
But I have to say, and there's one thing that kind of pisses me off with Waititi is the fact that I'm freaking jealous that he's married to Rita Ora. Just saying.
George over here hating,
That would make sense. The player, not the game.
Exactly. So let's pivot now to Lucasfilm. let's not get controversial at all here. Now we're going to Lucasfilm. I'll start with you, Evan. What do you think, man? Do you think they can turn this around?
Yeah. Because what are they turning around? It's been years since we had a movie. It's been, 2019? I bet for Star Wars fans, they're so happy that Marvel was like, I mean, they're not happy, of course, but like I think internally at Disney, they're like, thank God a lot of the heat's off of Star Wars now. It's a little bit on Marvel. They're sharing the hate. because for Star Wars, we haven't had a movie since TROS in 2019, so there's not much to turn around. Mandalorian's been a consistently big hit on streaming. They've had some misses with like Book of Boba Fett, but even then, I think the viewership has always been there for Star Wars, despite the mixed level of quality. We had a whole discussion, with our last big stream about Ahsoka, and that kind of led into the problems with like the Ahsoka Obi-Wan, like in terms of like the writing and how it's like not up to par as it should be. But I think Star Wars can definitely turn around. They have a much easier route because of the lack of projects on their slate. Acolyte's coming out in June. I'll be shocked if that's not one of the best shows of the year. I am so confident in the Acolyte. Like, oh my God, I cannot wait for that show. Hopefully the trailer comes out this week, by the way, because that Twitter account's been picking up steam.
And didn't they already, if I'm not mistaken, Evan, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but aren't they already moving forward with season 2 for Acolyte?
Rumored, but I think so. I think they're starting to write scripts. I think that's what like the rumors and leaks are saying, which I think is really good.
That shows a lot of confidence. Absolutely.
Exactly. So I'm confident in the Acolyte, and unlike Marvel, they only have like the Acolyte and outside of animation, they have Acolyte and Skeleton Crew this year. Next year, we don't know what they have in terms of live action projects, but they're starting with the Rey and Mando. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Like, I think Mando, and I think in 2026, we're going to have 2 Star Wars films, one in May and one in December. And I think the one in May, of course, is going to be the new Mandalorian and Grogu awful title movie. Now, do I want this movie? Not at all. Do I like the Mandalorian? Not that much. But are people going to go see it? Hell yes, because it's easily marketable. It was the only Disney Plus show that most people saw. Like, we talk about the confusion of Disney Plus. That's not happening with Mandalorian. Maybe the later seasons, but I don't think that's going to be necessary for a Mandalorian and Grogu movie.
Now,
it's going to be Mando and Grogu versus the Empire.
Now, Evan, can I ask you, were you never a fan of The Mandalorian, or it just kind of dipped for you as they kept on kind of utilizing that as like the main headliner?
It's funny. I was a fan of season 1. I thought season 1 was so cool because it was so separated. But halfway through season 2, my brother and I, we always watch these shows live together. Halfway through season 2, I'm like, Jalen, my brother, I'm like, I'm not liking where this is going. And I'm notoriously, I know everybody loved the season 2 ending. Didn't like it. Didn't like it at all. I don't like the whole Luke coming in. I know it makes narrative sense, but whatever. Like, I didn't like Luke coming in, Boba Fett coming in. Season 3 was even more of a mess, not in terms of new characters coming in, but like it was just not narratively up to par for me, or it's not going the direction I thought it was going to go in. The show's like, it's simply popcorn fun with some Joseph Campbell symbolism in between, but I don't think Favreau is utilizing that symbolism to the best of his, or that could be yielded there, in other words. But I think because you have Mandalorian and Grogu, which is so different from the other stuff that's coming out later, which is the Rey movie, I think even if Mando and Grogu isn't a hit, the Rey movie could be, or vice versa. I think the lack of projects is going to do well for them because all they have is like 1 or 2 big hits that they need, and then fans will be happy again. I think for Star Wars fans, you feed them once, they'll be fine. You give them what happened in like 2018 and 2019 was like Last Jedi, which I love. Last Jedi was divisive. Solo came out, didn't do well. The next up to bat was TROS, didn't do well. So like, that's 3 in the span of like 3 years. Not doing well, and that's kind of what crashed Star Wars popularity. But all they need now is a couple of good projects, and they'll be back on board.
Yeah, Star Wars is totally a sleeping giant. People, you see all these YouTube, channels and shit. Like they're like, oh yeah, Star Wars is dead. Yada yada. Star Wars will never die. Maybe it's in hibernation a little bit, right? But
I'm just telling you, OG, if it's a sleeping giant and they're in hibernation, they better wake the hell up and quit because it's like
hopefully.
But George, like, if somebody looks at the most watched TV shows for the past couple years, Mandalorian's going to be there, Ahsoka's going to be there, Kenobi's going to be there. Star Wars viewership is doing perfectly well. Quality-wise, that's where we can get into a discussion.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the notion of what Jay was saying. It's like you can put any person in the suit, in the outfit, so to speak, but if you don't have a good enough storyline for it, and that's what I think these companies rely on. It's like, because The Mandalorian was such a big hit, it's like, okay, we can kind of throw any story together, we can just do whatever we want, but as long as it's titled The Mandalorian, it's like, we'll be fine, we'll be okay, people will come and see it, and that's just not the case. That they have to get out of that
Pedro
mentality.
Pascal in it.
Yeah.
It seems to be everybody's strategy these days.
Yeah, exactly.
And now he's out of the suit. He's doing Fantastic Four. It's like, they don't need him to do the movie. He's gonna come in for one day, go in a closet, say like, "This is the way," and walk out with $1 billion. Like,
I know, it's crazy.
This guy's got the life. What do you think? What do you think, Jay? Star Wars coming back? Nowhere to go but up, or what?
I agree with a lot of what Evan is saying, but here's the bigger problem that I think Star Wars has. The last thing that you want as a creative entity is for people to start talking about the behind the scenes drama in leadership and the way that the company's running. Like, it's one thing for people to hate on characters and hate on a story. It's another thing for them to be like, we want somebody gone from leadership, right? And here's the problem. I think Kathleen Kennedy is one of the best film producers in history. I have nothing against Kathleen Kennedy, but the bad vibes on Star Wars are so bad at this point that I don't know that they get out of this scenario with even just one hit. I feel like because they've had one hit, they've had several hits, and I still feel like there's this like bad vibes around Star Wars, to the point where if you invite me to talk about Star Wars on a podcast, I'm probably going to be like, I'm not sure I want to, dude, because like I will all the time with my buddy Michael Young, Nerd Soul. I'll talk to him about Star Wars whenever he wants to talk about Star Wars, but there's just such bad vibes around Star Wars that I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of people asking my opinion and then giving me their opinion about Star Wars. I don't care what you think about Star Wars anymore. I just don't care. I don't want to hear it. So my thing is, I feel like they need what DC is getting. They need a new vision. They need somebody else. The fact that why am I not confident, not as confident as Evan is? Because they greenlit a Rey movie. Do I love Daisy Ridley as Rey? Yes. I think she's one of the best Star Wars characters of all time, to be honest with you. Why am I disappointed they greenlit a Rey movie? Because the bad vibes around what they did with the sequel trilogy don't lend me to believe that Rey movie is going to be awesome. And it's going to come up with the same people talking about the same shit YouTube videos about how terrible Star Wars is. I'm just done with it, man. Like, I want new something else.
Well, so Jay, tell us what you think about Star Wars.
exactly, bro. And Jay, you really do bring up a fantastic point here, right? I'm the same. I'm kind of in the same boat a little bit. Like, I like Rey as a character; she's fantastic, and I like. I actually, the sequel trilogy. The individual movies were cool. I had fun with all three, but as a collective, they weren't the greatest through storyline, right? And I do think there's a place for these ancillary films and even series for the sequel trilogy to sort of come in and kind of put meat on the bones, kind of like what Clone Wars did for the prequels, right? I think there's a place for that. I think you could do a lot with that. But I think the timing of the Bray movie is I think you make a great point where it's like it's too soon. Let's go ahead. I think the Mando movie with Grogu, that's probably the smarter move right now. That's kind of like the Frozen. That's a sure hit. You're going to get
choice, though.
What happened?
It's a safe choice. I can't call it a mistake because, again, I think it's going to make money. Right. But I think that's all they're looking at. I don't think they have any kind of creative juice in their body. Like, hey, this is going to be a great story to tell. I think it's just going to be, hey. Like, maybe similar to what Jay was saying, maybe the Rey movie is going to be a bit divisive. Let's put some good popcorn in their mouths and make them happy for a few months before the Rey movie. But I mean, I have to disagree though for the Rey movie. I'm biased. I love the sequel trilogy. I think Force Awakens and Last Jedi are fantastic. I don't want to talk about Tross though, but I think 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I mean, you're batting the same average as like the prequel trilogy a little bit. True. And for me, I just think it's been 2019 was the last time we saw Rey, and I think for them, they're not doing another Rey trilogy. I think what's smart about what Lucasfilm is doing is that they're giving us a Rey movie in the future, and then we have a movie in the past by the the guy who did Logan. I'm blanking on his name right now. But we have an old James Mangold. Thank you. He's doing, which is my most anticipated of the projects. Mm-hmm. He's doing one in the past, and then you have Dave Filoni doing another Mandalorian movie. So that's coming like whenever that comes out. But like I think the diversity of their films, I think, is pretty exciting. Now, regardless of what happens, whenever the Rey movie comes out, it could come out in 2050. It's going to have bad blood on it because that's just who people are these days. I think you can't really hide away from it. You're going to get those bad vibes, but you had those bad vibes with The Force Awakens, and it made $2.5 billion. I mean, like, obviously it got worse with The Last Jedi and Tross, but like I think regardless of quality, people are going to be hating anyways. So I think you just have confidence in your story, and I think you should be fine. Well,
that's a fair point, Evan, because if you look at like, okay, for like, I'm gonna get a little controversial here for a second, but that's okay. It wouldn't be the first, wouldn't be the first time for sure. But like, if you look at all the like the YouTube, the usual suspects, I'll say, right?
Great movie.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, love that movie. Love that movie.
Right. If you look at the lead up to like Barbie, right? It was all the usual suspects. This is the wokest movie of all time. This is so woke. Yada yada yada. They were trashing this thing before it was out. This is the worst thing to ever hit cinema. The movie comes out, the normies love it, and it makes $1 billion. And that YouTube machine just you could hear a mouse pee on a cotton ball. It was so quiet after that. You know what I'm saying? So that might be the case with a Rey movie, right? Like they might there might be a scenario here where you obviously there's going to be the usual suspects talking about it on YouTube and the whole thing, and it's the worst thing ever. Woke Disney, the whole thing. But if the movie comes out and it crushes and the normies fall in love with it, it might be like a Barbie where they're like, it cuts through all that noise. You know what I'm saying?
So me personally, if we're going to go down the controversial road, might as well. For me, which, by the way, two of the greatest films I think that ever hit the cinema, being that you said The Usual Suspects, is that one and L.A. Confidential. I love those two movies. For me, okay, I'm going to try to clean up my words here. Okay, so I feel like it became an issue when Disney bought Lucasfilm. Okay. And the notion where I felt like they were trying so hard to create content that they can get people on they could get just the Star Wars fans on their side, because those are the people that they had to speak to the most. Disney fans were always going to be Disney fans no matter what. They had to get these diehard Star Wars fans onto their side. So it's like trying to create this content where to get these diehards over onto the side that it was a good idea that Disney bought Lucasfilm. Do I think that was a bad idea? No. But I felt like that's what created these obstacles and challenges to kind of get Lucasfilm back on its feet, because before then, when Disney was utilizing the Star Wars characters or the Star Wars brand, it was with, just basically in the parks, using it for Star Tours or using it for the Star Wars weekends. It wasn't where it was so refined and constricted that it's like, okay, we got to stick to like a specific lore and we got to stick to this specific timeline. And it's like, I just feel like that they're trying a little bit too hard. Okay. So that's my, as I said, I don't think it was a bad idea that they bought Lucasfilm, but I felt like that's where a lot of the issues started when you were trying to convey people that, Lucasfilm and Disney are now like married,
one and the same.
Yeah,
it's a very difficult marriage, and I think that's been shown across the board with the way the fans react. But Last Jedi made $1 billion. It got a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, well received. It had the cleanest production. You can't talk about the production for Last Jedi because there was no bad production there.
Sure,
and it still became the worst, cesspool of garbage on the YouTube internet. Like in terms of like YouTubers going after that movie with everything, and that's how they got their money, by going after Rian Johnson and Lucasfilm and Kathy after The Last Jedi, which was a huge success.
Sure.
This Rey movie can be a huge success, and I think we're still going to have those bad vibes. I don't know how you can erase it. even if you take out Kathleen Kennedy, if you give Dave Filoni Lucasfilm, will that solve anything? Maybe.
Well, they're even going after him now. Those people are going after Dave.
Yeah. Well, but here's the thing. Here's the counterpoint, though. That organization you can't prove to me that it's being run well, right? Now, I was a person defending Kathleen Kennedy for months and months and months and months. But then when you start to see we've got canceled movie after canceled movie after canceled movie, and then I'm supposed to have confidence that the next movie is going to come out and it's going to be good and it's going to make billions. I don't know, man. Like I just feel like I feel like it's kind of like you got to wipe the slate clean and start all over. That's how I feel about it. I'm like, just start all over, man. Don't take me back to the sequel trilogy era. Don't put fucking Luke Skywalker in another thing. Like, I don't want to see Lando Calrissian come back. No. Wipe the slate clean. Start over somewhere else. This is the kind of decision making that I think is going on too. I don't know a person who would not watch a Knights of the Old Republic movie, and yet they will not touch that storyline. Why? Because it feels like they're trying to make films that they want to make that don't even get what the fans want to make at all. And I just don't understand that. So I have zero confidence in what Star Wars is going to do next.
I completely hear you. And yeah, I would love a Knights of the Old Republic. One of my favorite eras right now is the High Republic, which I think is getting into that era. The Acolyte, which I have full faith in, is getting into that era where the High Republic. Now, it's not like Jedi versus Sith, because the Sith are still inactive during the Acolyte. But I think we're getting closer and closer to delving in the past, because where else can you go for Star Wars?
Exactly.
And I think they're not wiping the slate clean, because they still want to do. The problem is their most profitable, most successful stuff right now is The Mandalorian, which is filled with characters we've seen before with Ahsoka. And I don't have a lot of. I'm with Jay, and I'm leaning towards Jay's case here. I don't have a lot of faith that Dave Filoni won't use like a CGI Luke, Leia, or Han for his New Republic versus Thrawn movie that's happening.
Right.
Because it happened in the books, and they want to be like the old fan, and the old fans love this. I'm like, no, we don't. We liked it in the 90s or in the 80s, but like people are more mature now. We're like, we don't want to see Luke, Han, and Leia again.
Right.
And we don't want to keep on seeing like Ahsoka in live action again. We don't want to keep on seeing Boba Fett in live action again, which I think Dave Filoni's era, only 6 years after the original trilogy, is prime full of those characters. And he got a lot of hype after that season 2 finale. So I think he thinks like what I'm doing is hot shit. And I'm just like, I don't think we need to do that. The Acolyte is the right direction. I don't know what else is coming out for Star Wars in the future, but like the Rey movie, yes, I know it's too soon. I can understand you guys' complaints about that one, but we're also getting one in the past. We're also getting like they're spreading out their eras. They're not having a consistent through line, which I think could be smart, could be bad, depends. We haven't seen it yet. But like by having 3 completely different movies in the pipeline for right now is the smart choice. We just got to get that Rey movie out the way. Hopefully it's good. Then we can go to the past. Then we can go keep on doing new things. If the past is successful, if James Mangold knocks it out of the park, you bet your ass we're going to get like a trilogy in the past. So, yeah.
And one thing that Mangold is really excels at, I think, Jay, you brought this up before in the past, is tone. Because I think even with the indie movie, he nailed the tone. That movie's going to feel like a Star Wars movie with Mangold.
Yeah. It's going to feel like a more serious take on the Star Wars movie, and I think that the fans will really appreciate it. Yes. Just like Indiana Jones, like it lacked some of the Spielberg magic, but it had the seriousness of a film that I think, I'm not sure it works for Indiana Jones as well, which is why people didn't like it as much as they could have. I liked it, but I think Mangold is the right play. He's done amazing stuff.
Also, another interjection, like Andor, huge hit across the board.
Andor is amazing.
It's super serious, but also it's funny, and it had a lot of levity too. Yeah. Like it had the perfect mixture of why different people, regardless of like what your interest in Star Wars lie, they loved Andor for a variety of different reasons. So I think if they can keep that same energy, get creatives who appreciate the material. They don't even have to be huge Star Wars fans, because we know Tony Gilroy hates Star Wars. Like you don't have to be the biggest Star Wars fan as a creative to knock a story out of the park. So that's what I'm hoping Mangold, Obey Chinoy, and Dave Filoni can do in the future with their unique movies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's pivot Now the Oscars were just a few days ago, right? And interesting stuff. Now, full disclosure, I didn't watch the Oscars, and I'll kind of get into that in a second. But the topic is, are the Oscars still relevant, right? And George, I'll start with you, and then I'll go around the panel. Did you watch the Oscars, George? And do you feel like the Oscars and just in general, these kind of award shows are still relevant in today's age?
So, to the first part of your question, I have not watched this year's Oscars yet.
Okay.
I am actually going to. I have it actually taped on my DVR because I do have a fun little thing that I write out my own ballot to see how close I get to the winners and see how many I could get. It's just a fun. I always did it for how many years. But just like my tradition, there have been a lot of people who've had Oscar parties, at their house. They would invite their friends over, that have a big widespread of food and hors d'oeuvres and what have you, and everyone would watch the Oscars. I personally, and I could be wrong, but I don't really see the hype that people, in just an everyday household that are having that Oscar feel. I think as far as like the buzz around Hollywood itself, yeah, it's a big ordeal. It's like one of the biggest nights, in Hollywood for actors, for directors, for writers, for sound and what have you. But I think as far as just like an everyday normie, that I just feel like the Oscars had kind of fallen off to the wayside a little bit. And I don't know if it's just not in people's best interest. Now, for me, as I said, I enjoy that kind of stuff because I love film. I love all the aspects of film. I love the behind the scenes stuff. So for someone like me, if someone said, are you still into the Oscars? Yeah, I'll always be into the Oscars, no matter how political it gets, for how, controversial it gets. I just enjoy the Oscars to kind of showcase the talent that goes around into making cinema. And I feel like that it deals with not just actors, but it deals with a lot of people that are part of the behind the scenes process, that people that don't really get showcased in the spotlight, like you film editors and cinematographers and the sound department and the costume department. These are people that basically make the movie. And a lot of people think that it's these actors that do, which they do brilliant performances, but it's like, who puts the actor on the screen, who directs the actor to feel a certain way or act a certain way, who puts them in their wardrobe, who does the special effects, who does the sound effects and what have you. And I feel like that's the approach that I look at it when it comes to the Oscars. Again, I'm a fucking cinema nerd. What could I say? So it's like, so to a normie, they could look at me like I have 5 heads, like, dang, you're weird. But it's like that. That's my. But just to the normie, I think that it's just not to people's liking anymore.
Yeah, and I like your approach to this, George, where it's like, giving honor, giving kudos, giving praise to the unsung hero. You know what I'm saying? The people behind the scenes, the sound guy, the griff, what do they call those guys? I don't know all the terminology, but you know what I'm saying, right? All the behind
the key grip.
Yes, the key grip and all that stuff, right? Like that stuff is like those people that do all that stuff, they don't get recognized. But the Oscars, they do. You know what I'm saying? Sound design, production design, all that stuff. That's awesome. I love that. Unfortunately, I think we live in a society now where it's like I feel like it's kind of becoming a little bit of a pastime. And it's not something that like the younger generations really care so much about. I think the Hollywood thing is sort of Hollywood in general. I mean, if you really want to think about it, like Hollywood in general is sort of getting minimized a little bit because kids nowadays have so many options in content, right? I mean, it's not just Hollywood. They can watch YouTube. They can watch all these other things, and they're not as focused on the Hollywood product. And then you're going to turn around and be like, okay, now watching an award show with all these celebrities and the awards, it's a tough sell. It really, really is. So I'm not really sure, but I like the element that you're talking about, George, where the behind the scenes folks get that recognition. That is freaking awesome. I love that element. I just don't know if the younger, the Zoomers and all that, I don't know if they're like into this.
And you make a good point, OG, because a lot of times, like even take my son, for instance, like he can recognize an actor, but he wouldn't know them by like their name or their portfolio or their background or anything.
Right.
Like when I was a kid growing up, it's like I know who John Travolta was. I knew who Robin Williams was. I knew who Leonardo DiCaprio was. I knew who Kate Winslet was. You know, it was like again, but then again, I'm a I'm a nerd, so to speak, and proud of it. But it's like, but kids nowadays, they'll say, yeah, you know that one person that's in that one film. It's like, can you be more specific? You know, it's like
it's just different. It's just different. What do you think, Evan? Do you think the Oscars, are still relevant? You think they still have a place in our kind of culture?
Completely. I think they are relevant. Will people watch them? No, but we did have a rise in viewership. I think last time I checked, it had like a 19.5 million people came to watch this year's award show, which is decent. More than the last 4 years. I think since like 2019 when Parasite won, it's been going downhill. And I think it goes to show the Oscars are still relevant in terms of just overall appeal, the way they keep awarding good products and good movies. To get people on board, that's what you got to do. Barbenheimer was the name of the game in 2023, and they dominated the nominations come Oscar night. If people like Barbie, they might be more interested to go watch the Oscars because Barbie's getting nominated. People who like Oppenheimer, they're more invited to go watch the Oscars because they want to support their favorite movie of the year. And I think that's what happened with this year's Oscars.
And can I ask you, Evan, because you actually bring up a good point, because a lot of the nominations this year are films that a lot of fans were attractive to the actual film itself. When you have a slate of films that the Academy feels like, which are great films, don't get me wrong, like throughout the years, but it's like that may not really kind of connect with the viewer. It's like, is someone actually going to take the time to watch films that they're not interested in? You know, so but as you said with Barbenheimer, it's like those are two massive films that dominated the box office. So it drew people to say, hey, you know what? Let's see what kind of content that comes out of this.
I think we're on the right track because there was a big, I'm a huge Oscar fan, by the way. I won $60 on Sunday because the Oscar pool that I was in, I had Emma Stone. Everybody was tied, but I had Emma Stone winning Best Actress. Everybody else had Lily Gladstone from Killers of the Flower Moon.
Wait, so Emma Stone won?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yes, I got it right.
I had, and I love Poor Things. I loved it. It was like my fifth favorite movie of the year. So I'm happy for that. But anyways, we had a bad history of the Oscars in terms of like after Slumdog Millionaire, which is one of my favorite wins.
Awesome.
We had like
awesome movie.
Great movie. We had like The King's Speech, The Artist, like Chicago, like a lot of those movies in the early 2000s, which were great movies, but just not watched by many. It took a while for us to get back to where we are now in terms of like Everything Everywhere All at Once being a cult classic, rising throughout 2022 and becoming a Best Picture winner that people actually really loved. 2021 Coda was a film people saw on Apple TV, and it became a very big hit because people watched it on their TVs and in the cinema. So I think the Oscars are continuing to award movies that are much unlike what they used to do. Like Barbie, Oppenheimer. I think we're in a great space. Even this year, lock Dune Part 2 in for getting a nomination, at least for Best Picture. So I think the Oscars will always continue to be relevant as long as they award quality movies. We got so lucky that Barbie and Oppenheimer were quality movies, and they got awarded as such.
Now, really quick, off the subject, but on the subject, Evan or Jay, maybe you guys would know because you guys watched the Oscars. I didn't watch it yet. What was the thing going on? Like, it became a meme that it was like recorded. I don't know if it was like backstage or something or out at the front where Emma Stone was standing talking to some people. I guess she looked at like on the monitor or something, and she like just like ran like abruptly. Like she was like running in her dress and her heels. Like, I don't know. Like I was trying to figure out like what was going on, but people were like utilizing that. Even like in the Disney community, they're like, when you find out that the line in Peter Pan's flight is like only 10 minutes, and they utilize that little caption. What was all that about? Like, what was she?
I think it's the meme where she was so surprised, I think, that she won. So I think the meme is just like, oh, I'm surprised. Let me go up on stage. I think that's what you're talking about, or maybe.
Okay.
Or something like that. Because her face was like, it was so memeable because she was stunned. Like, meanwhile, and then people like push her and she runs up on stage. Her dress is broken. So it was a very funny moment. So I think maybe that might be it. But I think people are much more in tune with the Oscars because they're awarding. Kids are growing up watching Emma Stone movies, or if they never heard of Cillian Murphy before 2023, they know he was the lead in their favorite movie of the year, so they want to support him. Or even my favorite win of the night. Sorry, another spoiler, George, but
you're good.
Best visual effects went to Godzilla -1, which was astounding. I love that movie so much. I saw it 3 times. And I think people, regular fans who might not even be aware of what goes into best visual effects, they liked Godzilla -1. They know he looked great in it, and they want to support the people who created it. So I think that goes all in.
And thank you, Evan, because you just confirmed I got 2 for 2.
There you go.
I went 19 out of 23 this year. Yeah.
What?
Ooh, nice.
Nice, man. Nice. Jay, Oscars. What do you think, man? And did you watch them this year?
I did not watch them this year. I normally do, but ever since I became a cord cutter, I have no way of really watching them half the time. So like, it's
Which
just
sucks.
Like, yeah, which sucks. So it's hard. Usually, I'll sign up for like a free live thing, or like I'll go over to a friend's house or whatever. But this year I didn't. Here's the problem that I think that is occurring. I've seen this problem from several different angles. This is going to be way too in depth for the question that you're actually asking, OG. But like, here's something that I'm seeing happen. I'm seeing institutional trust dropping dramatically, right? And for a lot of good reasons, by the way. So I see institutional trust dropping and like populist ideas rising. And the problem with that is that in the areas where there have been solidified ways of doing things, those things are becoming, largely because they became too popular, are now becoming sort of like fractured, right? And they don't know how to adapt to the new populist mindset. So let me give you a couple of examples. I have worked in the tech startup or just the startup world in general, and I've worked in universities. And I would tell you, for the most part, it used to be that when I was growing up, everyone said you got to get a college degree. Nowadays, I don't know that that's so true anymore, right? Like you may not need a college degree if your interest is having a really good career in something. Honestly, blue collar jobs are going to pay a lot, and they're not going to be affected by AI very much because AI is not showing up to do your plumbing, right? And I think that what's happening is what I've seen start to happen is that those institutions start to crumble with their standards a little bit because they're trying to attract those populists to them. And so my concern is I think the Oscars did a good job of awarding films that deserve to be seen and like like the only reason Oppenheimer makes $1 billion is because Christopher Nolan made Batman. If Christopher Nolan made Oppenheimer without having made Batman and Inception and Interstellar and this like list of hits, a movie about a guy who might lose his security clearance because he created a bomb at one point in time, like that's not going to be $1 billion movie, right? Like, there's a confluence of factors there. So how does this apply to the Oscars? I think that back in the day, the Oscars were this elite Hollywood group. The Hollywood Foreign Press was awarding things to people in Hollywood, and this was this glitz and glamour thing that most people had no clue how it worked. They had no clue what went into it, and it was like, I just am showing up because I want to see what Elizabeth Taylor looks like tonight. She's going to be all dressed up. I'm just showing up to see what Brad Pitt looks like. If you look at like how younger people view Hollywood, first of all, the movie stars in Hollywood are all 60 years old. People still reference my favorite movie star is Harrison Ford. The dude's over 80. My favorite star is Brad Pitt. Dude's over 60, I believe. He's over 50 for sure. I think he's pushing 60. Tom Cruise over 60. Those are the people that are still making it. You don't see, for younger people, you don't see a lot of like, oh, we all love Tom Holland. Now, why is that happening? It's happening because tech has pushed the ability for younger people to be interested in whatever they want to. No longer is it Hollywood that says we're going to release these kind of movies and this is all you get to watch. Nowadays, it's like, yeah, we'll do a smaller outlet, we'll do a smaller thing, and now somebody will be interested in that. It's people you and I have never heard of, right?
Well, and Jay, you bring up a fantastic point, because it's like in the 50s, if you were a kid in the 50s, you're watching the Mickey Mouse Club. You don't have a choice. You know what I'm saying?
You don't have a choice. Yeah, there's a limited set of things for you to be interested in. And now that's not true anymore. So I can be interested in whatever I want to be interested in. So I think that my point is, I think institutions will have a more and more difficult time of attracting people who are like, you're just not my vibe, man. I watch this. I don't watch this other thing. I don't care about that. Even news, right? Look at what's happened with news. Used to be a few channels that you can get your news. Now, if you don't like the way that Fox News said something, if you don't like the way that CNN said something, you could go watch Philip DeFranco like I do on YouTube, right? Like there's a billion different things you could do. You could choose to invest your time and energy in. And so I think that the Oscars will adapt. I think Evan brought up some really good points about how they've already started to adapt, right? Like let's face it. I don't think anybody on the Oscars board really thought that Barbie was one of the best movies, but they still gave it. I'm pretty sure it got a Best Picture nomination, didn't it?
Best Picture, it had like 11 nominations or so. Yeah.
Exactly.
Dang,
and it's not because they all went, yeah, wow. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not criticizing Greta Gerwig here. I think Greta Gerwig did amazing with what she was given, but that's not the kind of movie that would normally win an Oscar, nor was it a front runner to ever win an Oscar. And so why did they put it up for 11 nominations? Because they went, people loved it. Let's make sure that at least we want to have, who do we want to show up? Margot Robbie. We gotta have Margot Robbie show up, right? So we better put it up for a category. So I think that they're learning on how to adapt to that, but
yes.
I think that institutions have to adapt, or else they will basically die.
And
So,
going completely with your point there, I think, and with the question, are the Oscars still relevant? You could say the same thing about a lot of other award shows.
Yes.
I used to watch the Grammys. Not anymore. I don't care for the Grammys. The Emmys or Grammys are going downhill in terms of ratings. Emmys continue to decline. The Oscars went up, but sometimes it goes down. I think it just depends, because there's so much out there for people to watch, especially for TV. Yeah. TV has extended exponentially. So they're not going to watch the Emmys because they don't talk about their show or something like that. So it's just it's an award show thing in general. People don't want to sit there and watch 2 hours for a random show they didn't watch, like The Crown, to win all these awards or something like that. Or Succession. I love Succession, but if you don't like that, then you don't really want to watch the Emmys, because it's going to sweep the Emmys or something like that. So it just, there's a lot of projects out there, whether it's music, TV, movies, art in general is expanding across the board, and I think that's going to really harm or help the institutions. They just got to adapt. Yeah. Is
the MTV Awards, is that still a thing, or
it is?
They'll do it, yeah.
It's not great though. It's not great. Where was I reading? It was like best horror movie, and it went to like this one indie movie. It's like their categories are nonsense. And it's just very much still just a popularity. They just want to see Rachel Zegler on stage or Ryan Gosling on stage or something like that. Not great. Yeah.
Interesting conversation. Yeah, but it's good to see, though. I mean, the Oscars, like you were saying, Evan, the numbers were pretty good this year. That's good.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Oscars. I will always support the Oscars, mainly because I win bets and I get money. But I like watching the Oscars. I've been watching the Oscars closely since like 2014, my first year of college, because I liked Birdman a lot. I loved Birdman. I remember showing it to my family, and they all hated Birdman. They're like, Evan, you're never picking movie day again. I'm like, Birdman is good. They also didn't like Arrival in 2016. And then, they stopped listening to my choices, even though I'm always right.
Arrival was fantastic. I love that movie.
Arrival is one of my top 5 movies ever. I love Arrival. It's still Denis Villeneuve's best movie, in my opinion. But yeah, so I think the Oscars are doing very good with just congratulating the right movies and awarding them as such, and I hope they continue to do so, because if they go back to that, like the King's Speech, The Artist, people might not show up to those kind of ceremonies.
Yeah, absolutely, gentlemen, it was an honor talking shop with you guys today. A lot of great topics covered. George, I will start with you, the Italiano, host of Citrus Corner here on the channel. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There we go, Mr. Sticky Icky and Jay Shear. You don't want anyone to find you, right?
I know you can try. You can try to find me. Go try to find me and follow me and tell me you followed me. No,
I'm gonna get a lot of Star Wars comments tonight.
Oh, dude, we're gonna get plenty of Star Wars comments. We always, yeah. Oh my gosh.
I'm telling you, and that's the thing too, Jay. Not to like digress too much, but like that's the problem with like the fandom, every fandom. It's not just Star Wars; it's every fandom right now. People can't have conversations anymore.
They don't want a discussion.
Here's the problem that I have too. Like generally speaking, like I'm not interested in team building, right? Like I may not agree with Evan, but I want to be Evan's friend. I don't care if I agree with Evan or not. It doesn't make him part of my team or not part of my team. I don't care about that, right? So like most of YouTube at this point and most of Twitter is, can we build friend groups? Can we build team groups? Not even friends, because they don't even like each other that much. We're going to build teams so that we can go against that other person's team, right? Yep. And I'm like, I don't care about their teams, dude. I could care less. Now, if you want to have a conversation with me about why I think The Last Jedi works as a standalone film but doesn't work as a trilogy film, I will have an intelligent conversation with you about that every day. But if you're gonna get up there and be like, I just don't like porgs, I'm like, fine, dude. Like I don't care about that, right? Like I don't care to have that conversation with you. You better show up and want to talk to me at a level where you've thought about it for a few hours. Don't just come off the hip with, I thought about this for a few seconds and I can't stand the female leads. Or that's the problem. You know what? Go pound sand. I don't give a shit. So my thing is, if you want to have a real conversation, let's have a real conversation. Otherwise, don't talk to me.
Yeah.
So...
And it's so high school, right? It's so high school, like the team building and stuff. Like, and that's why I've said it so many times on the channel, man. Like, I think we even talked about it last night, George, with the pixie duster stuff. It's like, God, you can't say one nice thing about this company and you're a freaking pixie duster. It's like, it's ridiculous.
Or vice versa. You say one thing that's like negative about the company, and all of a sudden, you're on that team. You must be on team negative because you said something negative. No, man, I don't like Disney PR. I love Disney. I can't wait to go to Walt Disney World. I don't want to hear about. I think Disney PR sucks, right? Like, so, like, it's. Now, do you want to have a long conversation about why I think that? Watch the OG show because we've talked about it before. But my point is like, I want discussions about films. Like, for example, my friend Josh Taylor, Modern Mouse. He loved Poor Things. Evan, you loved Poor Things. I did not like Poor Things, right? But I would like to have an hour-long conversation with you about that. I'm not going to be like, I didn't like it because... No. I watched it. I invested my time in it, and I would like to have a good discussion, which I think is what Modern Mouse, Josh Taylor and I were doing. But like, and I respect his opinion. I don't think he's wrong about the things that he loved about it. I don't think he's wrong about those things. I saw different things that didn't sit with me well. I'm always game for a really intelligent conversation. I don't see a lot of intelligent conversations around, and I'm not even saying that I'm intelligent. I'm just saying I thought about the things that were going to come out of my mouth before I blurted them onto the page, right?
I know.
So yeah, you can follow me on social media. Good luck, dude. We'll see how that goes.
But in all seriousness, though, Jay has a fantastic channel called How Stories Work. Everybody needs to check that out it's on YouTube, How Stories Work. Check it out. Amazing stuff. And your short film coming, and you'll let us know when we have a firm date on that.
I can't wait to show you guys the short film. I think the short film was a ton of fun to put together. It's an intense film. I think people will watch it, and you might not even like it, but I think it's worth... Whenever I try and write something, not whenever, most of the time I write something, it's as a thought exercise to say, like, why does this happen in the world, and like, what does it mean? Right. And so you might look at it, you might be like, I don't like that. I don't like that it's that dark, or I don't like that it's that's the theme or whatever. But at least I want you to wrestle with it for a second. Right. And I can't wait to show it to you guys. So I'm hoping to get some more details about when it might come out, but I'm sure we'll do a, I want to do a West Coast premiere. I want to do a premiere out in Colorado where I am. And I want to do an East Coast premiere. So you guys are just get your tickets ready.
Hey, Evan, have you seen the trailer for his short film?
I think so. You released it a while back, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a while back. It was like
Yeah.
it's probably
January?
when did the trailer come out? January, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to do all 3 premieres like in one swoop?
Probably not. No. Probably some of those premieres will be at festivals, hopefully, and so it'll just be like I gotta wait for whenever that festival happens. You know what I mean?
Hell, I'll come to all 3. You know me. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I guess
Perfect.
Hey, Evan, George is the kind of guy, man. He buys plane tickets like on a whim, bro.
Couldn't be me.
He's like, he'll be there. But Evan, it was great having you on, bro. We got to have you on more often, talk shop with you. We always have a good time, dude. Thank you so much for coming on.
I love these discussions, and like what Jay and we guys have all been saying, I love having honest to good discussions. I dropped a lot of podcasts back when the sequel trilogy was airing, for example, where a lot of the Star Wars podcasts I used to listen to were just being mean to other podcasters I was listening to. And I'm like, I got to drop you. It's like we're not having a fun conversation, even if I disagreed with somebody. So I like following good places like this and other channels where they can have honest, good, and fun conversations. But yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter at HarrisEV9. I streamed the Oscars of 3. I didn't stream it. One of my friends, Where Heartbreak Feels Good, is another channel I talk about Oscars on. We did a whole Oscar award lead up last year into this year about the Oscars and my predictions and such. But we did a live stream on Sunday, which was fun to watch. Yesterday, I did a podcast back on My Cup of Tea, which is a podcast I do weekly. We talked about the possibility of Spider-Man 4 ever happening, our opinions of the Oscars, and some of the recent movies coming out, like Dune Part 2, which I love. And the Avatar show. I talked a lot about the Avatar Netflix show because I had a lot of thoughts. Avatar is my favorite animated show, favorite show in general of all time. So I had a lot of thoughts about the show, which I did not hate. So if you want to have an honest discussion about that and not just yell at me that the show sucks, like half of Twitter still does on my DMs, like you just did whatever. Stop it. You're getting muted. Anyways, follow me on Twitter at HarrisEV9.
Absolutely. And all his links will be in the description down below. Thank you all so much for watching this episode of the Orange Nerd Show. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye, everybody.
세상이 누구에게나 공평하게 추악해.